Have you ever felt just overwhelmed trying to navigate the sheer volume of new techniques in AI research, especially when it comes to large language models?
Oh, definitely. It feels like every week there's a new paper, a new approach.
Exactly. And you're left wondering, what truly works, what's signal and what's noise.
It's a challenge of abundance, really. This rapid pace of innovation, it often leaves practitioners grappling with fragmented information and, frankly, conflicting advice.
Well, today on AI Paper Podcasts, we're aiming to cut through some of that noise. We're diving deep into a really fascinating paper. It's titled Tricks or Traps, a deep dive into RL for LLM reasoning.
Right. That's the one by Zihei Liu and colleagues from Alibaba, Beijing Jiaotong University, HKUS, Nanjing, Peking University, OpenRLHF, and CleanRL. Quite a collaboration.
It is. And it's a critical review paper that tackles this confusing landscape of reinforcement learning techniques specifically for LLM reasoning.
And here's the core insight, the really interesting bit for you listening. The authors found that sometimes incredible simplicity can actually outperform intricate complexity.
You mean like less is more?
Pretty much. Their rigorous analysis reveals that a minimalist combination of just two techniques, which they call light PPO, consistently beats far more elaborate multi-component algorithms like GRPO and DAPO.
Wow. Okay, that's a big claim. It really challenges that more is better mentality we often see.
It does. It's a radical finding.
So our mission today is to systematically unpack their rigorous reproductions and isolated evaluations. By the end of this session, you should have clear, actionable guidelines for selecting RL techniques, hopefully saving you immense time and confusion in your own LLM work.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Reinforcement learning for LLMs, RL for LLM, it's really exploded, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Especially for those tough reasoning tasks like math problems or complex code generation.
Absolutely. It's undeniably pushed LLM performance beyond what pre-training alone could achieve. But like you said, this rapid progress has also, maybe inevitably, led to a bit of a chaotic landscape.
Yeah, chaotic is a good word. We've seen a noticeable lack of standardized guidelines, not enough really deep analysis comparing apples to apples.
And it's common to encounter conflicting conclusions from different papers. GRPO might say group-level normalization is best.
While Reinforce++ and, for instance, argues for batch level.
Exactly. And then there's the whole debate on whether to even use the standard deviation term in normalization, with some saying it causes bias.
It's like everyone's building their own amazing sandcastle, but the blueprints for the best foundations aren't shared consistently, or sometimes they just flat out contradict each other.
Right. And beyond these conflicting approaches, you have all these seemingly separate techniques: normalization, clipping, filtering, how you aggregate the loss.
It really creates non-trivial challenges for any practitioner just trying to figure out the optimal mix for their specific model or task.
So to tackle this fragmentation, the authors took on a huge job. They did a systematic review, rigorous reproduction, and isolated evaluation of the most common RL techniques.
And crucially, they did it all within a unified open source framework they developed called ROWL.
Yeah, ROWL RL for LLM reasoning. That unified framework is key, isn't it, for fair comparisons. Removes a lot of it depends on the implementation variables.
Definitely. And they used extensive experimental settings too. Varied difficulty data sets, easy, medium, hard, from simple zoo data and deep math.
And diverse model sizes, specifically Qwen 3.4b and Qwen 3.8b.
Both the base and the instruction-aligned versions, right?
Correct. Which, as we'll see, makes a difference. Their analysis really drills down into 4 key areas: normalization, clipping, masking, which they call filtering, and loss aggregation.
Okay. And for their baseline algorithm?
They used proximal policy optimization, PPO, pretty standard, and the advantage values, how good an action was compared to average, were computed using the reinforce algorithm method.
Got it. So let's dive into these individual tricks, as the paper calls them, and see what actually works and why. First up, normalization strategies.
Okay, so the core idea here is that normalizing the advantage values helps reduce gradient variance. Basically, it stabilizes the training process, makes policy updates more reliable.
Right, smoother training. But there's been this big debate, group level versus batch level normalization.
Exactly. Group level, which GRPO uses, normalizes rewards within the different responses generated for the same prompt. The idea is to foster intra-context competition, make the model compare its own answers to the same question.
Okay, makes sense. And batch level.
That's favored by Reinforce++O. It normalizes over the entire batch of prompts and responses. The goal there is to prevent reward hacking, where the model might find ways to get high rewards without actually getting better, especially if the diversity in a batch is low.
So group versus batch, what did the paper find? What's the verdict here?
Well, this is one of the key findings. They found that group-level normalization seems robustly efficient. It worked well across different reward types, like simple binary rewards or one, or larger scale ones, 1:1.
Okay, so group level is pretty stable. What about batch level?
Batch level was highly sensitive. It actually collapsed, performed terribly when used with those simple binary rewards.
Really? Why?
It seems to come down to how the reward scale impacts the standard deviation calculation. Think about it. If nearly all your rewards in a batch are 0, with maybe 1, the standard deviation is going to be tiny.
And you're dividing by that tiny number in the normalization formula.
Exactly. Which can make the normalized advantages, and thus the gradients, explode. It leads to instability. But interestingly, batch level recovered its effectiveness when they used larger scale rewards, like -1:1. There was just more variance for the math to work with stably.
That makes sense. It highlights the importance of the reward signal design itself.
Definitely. And this leads directly into their second key finding about normalization, the role of that standard deviation term itself.
Right, you mentioned some debate about removing it.
Yes. They found that when rewards are highly concentrated, maybe on an easy data set where almost all responses get the same reward, say all correct, the standard deviation becomes extremely small.
Like we just discussed.
Right. And dividing by that tiny value can excessively amplify gradients, leading to training instability. They termed this a difficulty bias. The model overreacts because the reward landscape is too flat.
So in those cases,
Simply removing the standard deviation term from the normalization denominator significantly enhances stability. Just normalize by subtracting the mean.
but what if the task does have high reward variance?
Then both approaches, keeping or removing the standard deviation, tend to work okay because the standard deviation is a more meaningful, stable number.
Okay, so it depends on the reward distribution.
Yeah.
After all that, did they land on a single most robust normalization technique? A kind of best practice?
They did, based on their experiments. Their recommended robust approach, finding number 3, is a hybrid. Calculate the mean at the group level, so local context,
Okay.
and calculate the standard deviation at the batch level, so global context.
Oh, interesting. Mix and match.
Yeah. They found this combination provides stronger normalization. The group level mean captures that local competition, while the batch level standard deviation provides a more stable denominator, especially helpful with sparse rewards or biased signals. It seems to strike a good balance.
That's a really practical takeaway. Okay, moving on to the second big category. Clipping strategies. Specifically, something they call clip higher.
Right. So traditional PPO uses clipping to prevent policy updates from straying too far too fast. It's a stability mechanism.
But it can be too restrictive.
It can. The paper argues that standard clipping can sometimes lead to entropy collapse. The model strategy becomes too deterministic, too narrow. It stops exploring different ways to reason, which is bad for complex tasks.
And clip higher is the proposed fix.
Exactly. Clip higher relaxes the upper bound for clipping, the epsilon high parameter. By making that upper limit larger, it allows more improving space, especially for tokens that initially had a low probability under the policy. This helps counteract that entropy collapse and encourages more exploration.
Makes sense conceptually. So when does this actually help? When should you clip higher?
Key finding number 4. Increasing epsilon high is more beneficial for models that already have stronger fundamental reasoning abilities. That means the aligned models, like Qwen 3.4b or 8b, benefited more.
Why do you think that is? Why not the base models?
Well, looking at their data, and this relates to figure 8 or 9 in the paper, showing entropy comparisons for the base models, like Qwen 3.4b base, adjusting the upper clip didn't do much, or sometimes even hurt performance.
Okay.
The reasoning seems to be that these base models have a pretty low policy clipping rate to begin with, and maybe somewhat naive expressiveness. There isn't much exploratory potential to unlock if the underlying model isn't quite capable of leveraging that freedom effectively.
Got it. The aligned models are better positioned to actually use that extra room for exploration clip higher provides.
Precisely. And this leads to a really fascinating linguistic insight. Key finding 5.
What's that?
They looked at which tokens were being clipped most often. With traditional tighter clipping, like an epsilon of 0.2, it disproportionately suppresses updates for connective tokens.
You mean words like therefore, if, because but.
Exactly. The very words that are crucial for structuring logical arguments and reasoning chains. By limiting changes to these, you might be inadvertently restricting the model's ability to form innovative reasoning structures.
Wow, that's subtle but potentially impactful. So what happens with higher clipping?
With higher clipping, say 0.28, the model seems better able to explore a broader range of this kind of discourse reasoning. The clipping action, based on their analysis like in Figure 11, shifts more towards high-frequency functional tokens.
Like is, the commas, things like that.
Right. Clipping those seems less detrimental to the overall reasoning structure. It allows core structural stability while still promoting more diversity in how the reasoning unfolds.
That's a great insight. Did they find any rules of thumb for how high to clip?
They did observe something interesting, key finding 6, related to model size. There seems to be a kind of scaling law for the smaller models, like 4B. Performance generally kept improving as the upper bound increased, even beyond the common 0.28 up to maybe 0.32.
So push it higher for smaller models.
It seems that way based on their results. But for the larger models, like 8B, they didn't see that same progressive improvement. Often, 0.28 remained optimal or close to it.
Interesting. Maybe larger models are inherently better explorers, just more stable.
Could be. It suggests larger models might not need quite as much push from the clipping mechanism. Their results, shown in Figure 12, illustrate these different trends quite clearly.
Okay, fascinating stuff on clipping. Let's move to the third area, loss aggregation granularity. Token level versus sequence level. What's the debate here?
This is about how you calculate the overall loss signal used for training. Do you give equal weight to each response sequence or equal weight to each token within the responses?
What's the difference in practice?
Sequence-level aggregation, which GRPO uses, basically averages the loss for each sample. Every prompt-response pair gets equal, say, regardless of how long the response is. The potential flaw. A single token error in a short response has way more impact than one in a very long response.
So longer responses get less influence per token.
Right. Token-level aggregation, used by DAPO, tries to fix this. It sums the loss across all tokens in the batch, then normalizes by the total token count. This gives every single token equal contribution to the final loss signal.
Seems fairer, maybe. So which one worked better?
Well, key finding 7. It depends on the model. Token-level loss was clearly more effective on the base models. They saw better convergence, higher peak accuracy, and more robustness, especially on the harder data sets.
Okay, token level for base. What about aligned models?
Interestingly, the opposite was often true there. Sequence-level aggregation frequently outperformed token level on the aligned models.
Huh. Why would that be?
The thinking is that aligned models already have pretty strong reasoning capabilities baked in from instruction tuning. Making every token contribute equally might be unnecessary, or could even slightly disrupt the already well-formed reasoning structures. It really underscores that the optimal strategy here is quite model-dependent.
No single right answer again. Good to know.
Yeah.
All right, finally, let's talk filtering strategies, specifically overlong filtering. What's the problem it's trying to solve?
The issue arises particularly in complex reasoning tasks that require many steps. If you set a fixed maximum generation length for the LLM, say 1,000 tokens, you might cut off a perfectly valid multi-step solution right before the final answer.
Right, so the model did the right reasoning, but gets penalized because it ran out of space. A false negative.
Exactly, that creates noisy training signals. But there's another related problem. Sometimes models generate repetitive loops, or they find the correct answer early on but then fail to stop, just adding filler or nonsense. This is an ostensible positive phenomenon. Seems good because the answer is there, but it's still bad behavior that pollutes the training data.
Okay, so how does overlong filtering help?
It's pretty simple. It just masks the rewards of responses that exceed a certain length threshold. It effectively tells the model, look, this output went on too long, it's not useful for training, even if parts of it look okay. This helps preserve the robustness of the training loss and discourages these unwanted behaviors.
Makes sense. So when is this filtering actually useful? Is it always good?
Key finding number 8. Its effectiveness varies. They found it had limited effectiveness on tasks requiring truly long-tail reasoning, where very long answers are genuinely needed and expected. Filtering them might be counterproductive.
Okay, so not for super long tasks. Where does it shine?
It proved highly beneficial for short to medium length reasoning tasks. Let's say tasks where answers should typically fit within an 8K token limit. In those cases, filtering out the unproductive or repetitive overlong samples significantly enhanced accuracy and the clarity of the model's outputs.
What about much longer context windows, like 20K tokens?
There, the benefits seem to diminish again. At those longer limits, the filtering was mostly catching those really degenerate no-stop repetition anomalies where the model just gets stuck repeating itself, rather than cutting off genuinely truncated reasoning.
So it still helps clean up some noise, but maybe less crucial than in the medium-length case.
Right. It helps the model distinguish between a properly completed generation versus one that's truncated or just stuck in a loop, preventing those invalid signals from messing up training. But its impact is context-dependent.
Okay, so we've dissected normalization, clipping, loss aggregation, and filtering. Lots of nuances. This brings us to the paper's big reveal, right? Light PPO.
Exactly. After carefully evaluating all these individual techniques in isolation, their hypothesis was pretty straightforward. Maybe a simple, empirically driven combination of just the best performing techniques would yield robust improvements without all the extra bells and whistles.
So what is light PPO? What's in the light version?
It's designed specifically for non-aligned models using a critic-free PPO setup, and it uses just two of the techniques we discussed.
Only two. Which ones?
First, that hybrid advantage normalization, group level mean, batch level standard deviation, and second, token level loss aggregation.
That's it. No special clipping, no filtering.
That's it. Just those two core components applied to vanilla PPO loss.
And how did this minimalist approach stack up against the more complex algorithms like GRPO or DAPO, which use, 5 different techniques?
Here's the proof in the pudding, and it's really striking when you look at their graphs, like in Figure 16. Light PPO consistently outperformed GRPO and DPO on the Qwen 3.4b base and Qwen 3.8b base models.
Consistently. Across different math benchmarks and difficulties.
Yes. What's really remarkable is the stability. Light PPO shows this steady, consistent upward trend in accuracy over training. In contrast, GRPO and DPO, while maybe hitting a similar peak briefly, often collapsed quite rapidly afterwards. Their performance wasn't stable.
Wow. So light PPO wasn't just competitive, it was often better and much more reliable, especially on these base models.
Exactly. More robust, simpler to implement.
So why does this simple combo work so well? What's the magic?
It seems to hit the sweet spot for these base models. That specific normalization counters the interference from homogeneous rewards we talked about. The token level loss is efficient and, as we saw, particularly suited for base models. And importantly, by not including things like overlong filtering, it avoids potentially restricting complex outputs that might be needed for reasoning.
Less truly is more, but only if you pick the right less.
You got it. It's about understanding the mechanisms and choosing wisely based on empirical evidence, not just adding complexity for complexity's sake.
So wrapping up, this deep dive really reveals something important, doesn't it? In the complex world of RL for LLMs, simplicity, when guided by rigorous testing, can be the ultimate sophistication.
Absolutely. It's a direct challenge to that common trend of over-engineering algorithms, adding more and more components hoping for better results.
And for you, the listener, this paper gives really actionable, data-driven guidelines.
Yeah.
It helps cut through that fragmentation and confusion in RL for LLM reasoning. It's like a clear roadmap if you're working in this space, especially with base models.
And beyond the purely technical findings, the authors make a really vital call for transparency.
Yes, about sharing implementation details.
Exactly. They strongly advocate for increased disclosure in industry reports and papers, especially with this worrying trend towards closed sourcing the big models. That transparency is crucial if we want to bridge the understanding gap between academia and industry and allow everyone to build on best practices.
Couldn't agree more. And looking ahead, what do they suggest?
They point towards continued monitoring of RL4 LLM developments, which is obviously needed. They also suggest consolidating algorithms into unified modular suites, like their own Rollo framework, making it easier to compare and combine techniques.
And presumably, further exploration of these kinds of streamlined, simpler RL algorithms like light PPO.
Right. It's all about moving the field towards more robust, adaptable, and maybe more comprehensible progress.
So, a final thought for you to take away. As you go about your own work in AI, maybe pause and consider how often we instinctively assume that more complexity automatically leads to better results. This paper is such a powerful reminder that a clear, fundamental understanding of the underlying mechanisms, backed by solid empirical rigor, can lead to incredibly powerful, elegant, and sometimes much simpler solutions.
It really makes you wonder what other areas of AI research might benefit from a light approach. Where else are we perhaps overcomplicating things?
Definitely something to ponder in your own work.
For sure.
We strongly encourage you to check out the paper itself. Tricks or traps? Explore the role framework they've open sourced if you're doing hands-on work. And of course, continue your own explorations into this incredibly fast-moving field.
Keep learning.
Until next time on AI Paper Podcasts, keep learning and keep building.